Most people dream of being Isekai'd as a hero with a legendary sword. Me? I just wanted a weekend that didn't involve a 2 a.m. conference call with a shipping hub in Singapore. My name was Lee Sang-woo. I was a senior logistics manager for a global e-commerce giant. I didn't die saving a kid from a truck. I died at my desk, clutching a lukewarm coffee while staring at a spreadsheet of delayed cargo ships. My heart just clocked out before I did. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in heaven. I was in a drafty stone room that smelled like wet dogs and old taxes. Young Master Leon, are you finally awake, or are you just practicing being a corpse? I looked up. Standing there was a man who looked like he'd been carved out of marble and polished with divine light. Silver hair, blue eyes that could cut glass, and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. This was Sir Cassian Thorne, the kingdom's most promising knight, and apparently my personal babysitter. I wasn't Lee Sang-woo anymore. I was Leon Halcroft, the eldest son of a disgraced count in the borderlands of the Oakhaven Kingdom. The original Leon was a degenerate gambler who had managed to turn a prosperous trading hub into a bankrupt wasteland. I looked at the stacks of parchment on the desk. Bills, IOUs, supply reports showing a 40% loss due to bandit raids and spontaneous spoilage. My eye twitched. I didn't see a fantasy world. I saw a supply chain nightmare. Cassian sighed, his hand on the hilt of his legendary blade. "The creditors will be here at noon, Leon. Your father is at the capital begging for a loan. If you don't have the tribute ready for the Royal Army's supply line, they'll strip your title and throw you in the dungeon. Not that you'd notice the difference from this pigsty." I didn't answer him. I was busy looking at the supply line map. "Cassian," I said, my voice raspy, "why are we sending grain to the front lines through the Whispering Woods?" "It's the traditional route, the shortest path." "It's a swamp," I snapped, standing up and pointing at the map. "Look at the moisture levels. The carts are sinking, the oxen are dying of exhaustion, and the grain is fermenting before it hits the border. You're losing 30% of the weight to rot and another 20% to bandits who are probably just starving villagers you're driving past." "It's the way it's always been done," Cassian said coldly. I felt a familiar heat rising in my chest. Not magic, just pure professional rage. "Not anymore," I said, a grin spreading across my face, the kind of grin that made Cassian take a half step back. "Cassian, get your armor on. We're going to the docks." "The docks are abandoned, Leon. They've been silted up for a decade." "Exactly," I laughed. "It's time to show this world the power of a just-in-time delivery system." By the time we reached the village, I looked like a man possessed. I spent the last of the Halcroft emergency gold, not on booze, but on shovels and beer. The villagers looked at me with pure hatred. I didn't care. I needed labor. "Listen up," I shouted, standing on a crate. "I get it. I'm a noble who gambled away your tax money, but today I'm the man who's going to make you rich." I pointed to the silted river. "We're going to dredge this canal in 48 hours. If we finish, every man gets a silver coin and a gallon of ale. If we don't, I'm selling the manor's furniture and you're all out of a job anyway." "You're insane," Cassian whispered behind me. "You can't dredge a canal in 2 days with just 50 men." "Watch me," I said. I didn't use magic. I used physics and incentives. I organized them into 3 shifts. I created a bucket brigade system that utilized the natural flow of the tide to wash away the loosened silt. But then the local merchant guild leader arrived, a fat man named Baron Silas, who had been overcharging the Halcrofts for land transport for years. "Young Master Leon, building a toy pond? You still owe me 500 gold for the last shipment of grain." I turned to him, putting on my best Leon face card, eyes bulging, a terrifying toothy grin that looked like a demon trying to imitate a human. "Baron Silas, my favorite parasite," I chirped. "I've decided to cancel our contract. In fact, I've decided you're going to donate your ox carts to the dredging effort, for free." "And why would I do that?" he scoffed. I pulled out a small ledger I'd found in the manor's basement. "Because according to these records, you've been weight shaving the Royal Army's grain for 5 years. That's treason, Silas. Do you want to lose your carts, or do you want to lose your head?" The Baron turned pale. Beside me, Cassian looked horrified. "Leon, that's extortion," Cassian muttered. "No, Cassian," I said, watching the Baron's men start digging. "This is resource reallocation." You ever have a boss who shows up exactly when you finally fixed the mess, just to ask why there's a smudge on the window? Well, in this world, that boss has a crown and the power to chop your head off. I was currently standing over a muddy map in the Halcroft Manor, looking like I hadn't slept since the previous century. My hair was a bird's nest, and I was clutching a piece of charcoal like a dagger, marking out shipping lanes that would actually make sense. The heavy thud of boots announced the arrival of my personal headache. Cassian Thorne walked in looking disgusted as usual. "Leon, adjust your tunic. You look like a grave robber who lost a fight with a badger. The Royal Inspector is here." I didn't even look up from the map. Is he bringing money? Because if he's not here to subsidize my new dredging equipment, he's wasting my billable hours. "He's bringing a divine decree and a squad of paladins," Cassian replied coldly. "So, no, he's bringing execution orders if the grain isn't accounted for." I finally looked up, a manic grin spreading across my face. "Perfect! I love a captive audience. Let's go meet the man of the hour." The doors to the study swung open with a bang. In walked Count Valerius, a man whose mustache was so waxed it looked like it could be used as a lethal weapon. Behind him were 4 knights in gleaming silver armor, their hands on their hilts. Valerius sneered as he looked around the room. "Leon Halcroft, I expected to find you face down in a wine cask. Instead, I hear rumors that you've been dredging and threatening Baron Silas?" I pivoted on my heel, putting on a terrifyingly fake customer service smile. "Count Valerius, welcome to the Halcroft Logistics Hub. You're just in time for the Q1 performance review. Care for some lukewarm water? We've cut the wine budget to pay for shovels." Valerius scoffed, looking at me like a cockroach that had just started talking. "Logistics Hub? What gibberish is this? I am here to seize the grain for the Northern Campaign. You are 3 weeks behind schedule, Leon. Your father's head is already on the chopping block." "Actually, Count, we're 48 hours ahead of schedule," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "Cassian, show him the window." Cassian let out a long, weary sigh and opened the heavy wooden shutters. Below us, the once silted, dead river was alive. Boats were moving in a perfect, synchronized line. I had organized the villagers into teams. They weren't just carrying sacks anymore. They were using gravity chutes I'd rigged up from the old lumber mill, sliding the grain directly into the hulls. Valerius stammered, his polished composure cracking. "What? How? That river was dead. And why are those boats moving so fast? The current isn't that strong." "It's called a lock system, Count. I managed the water levels to create an artificial flow," I explained, leaning against the window frame. "And those boats are moving fast because I told the oarsmen that the last boat to reach the border doesn't get paid for the day. Competition is a wonderful motivator, isn't it?" Cassian muttered under his breath just loud enough for me to hear. "You also told them you'd haunt their bloodline for 7 generations if they stopped to pee, but sure, competition is the word." Valerius shook his head, trying to regain his footing. This is irregular. The royal army requires a formal handoff. I need to see the inventory ledgers immediately. My eyes lit up with a predatory glow. I reached under the desk and slammed a massive 500-page book on the table. The sound was like a thunderclap, making the count jump. Inventory? Oh, I've got inventory. I've tracked every grain of wheat. I've tracked the caloric intake of the oxen. I've even tracked the 15% tax leakage your men tried to skim off the top this morning. The count paled. I don't know what you're talking about. I leaned in, my face contorting into what I like to call my managerial demon expression. My veins were popping, my eyes were wide and unblinking, and my smile was so wide it looked painful. Don't you count? Because my numbers don't lie. And if my numbers don't match the king's records, I start wondering where that extra gold went. Maybe I should send a logistics report directly to the palace. I'm sure the king would love to see where his war funds are actually going. Now, Lord Leon, let's not be hasty, Valerius stammered, backing away from the table. Perhaps we can optimize these records together. I watched him scramble to leave, knowing I had a high-ranking count in my pocket. Corruption, I realized, was just another variable you had to manage in a supply chain. Later that night, the house was silent except for the scratching of my quill. I was staring at a blueprint of the entire province when suddenly the lines on the paper began to glow. A pulsing blue light began to race across the roads and rivers on the map. I jumped back, nearly knocking over my inkwell. Wait, what the hell is this? Am I finally losing it from the caffeine withdrawal? A cold, mechanical voice echoed in my head. System initialized. Skill. Omniscient supply chain. Level 1 awakened. A system? Now? I shouted at the empty room. I've been digging mud and threatening nobles for a week, and now I get a power-up? Where were you when I was fighting that baron? Cassian entered the room carrying a tray of food, looking at me with his usual mixture of pity and annoyance. Leon, why are you talking to a map, and why are your eyes glowing like a possessed cat? Cassian, look at the map, I said, grabbing him by the shoulder. Do you see the red lines right there at the mountain pass? Cassian looked at the blank charcoal-stained parchment. I see a smudge of charcoal and your desperate need for a bath. There are no red lines, Leon. Go to sleep before you start seeing dragons in your soup. He couldn't see it, but I could. The map wasn't just paper anymore. It was a live feed. I could see a red congestion alert at the mountain pass. A group of merchants was stuck. If they didn't move, my entire timeline for the winter supply would collapse and my profit margins would go up in smoke. Cassian, grab your sword, I barked, already pulling on my boots. We have a bottleneck at the Iron Gate Pass. The Iron Gate, Leon, that's blocked by a rock ogre. It's been impassable for months. We send the long way around, like everyone else, Cassian argued. The long way adds 4 days to the lead time, I snapped. In my world, a 4-day delay is a death sentence for a manager. We're going to clear the warehouse of that ogre. Cassian stared at me. You? Fight an ogre? You can barely lift a ledger without getting winded. I'm not fighting it, Cassian. You are. I'm just the director of operations. Now move. Every second we stand here, the ROI on this trip is dropping. When we arrived at the Iron Gate Pass, the scene was worse than the map had shown. A massive stone-skinned creature was sitting in the middle of the only road, chewing on a pine tree like it was a toothpick. A line of terrified merchants was backed up for a mile, their horses foaming at the mouth with fear. Cassian drew his sword, which began to glow with a holy silver aura. Stay back, Leon. This will be messy. I'll try to draw its attention while the merchants retreat. Hold on, Silver Boy, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. Look at that ogre. Why is he sitting there? Because he's a monster? Because he likes the taste of knights? Cassian guessed. No, look at his feet. He's sitting on a massive deposit of blue iron ore. He's not a monster, he's a resource guardian. He's not hungry, he's bored out of his mind. I walked forward, waving a white cloth, which was actually just one of my expensive silk shirts. "Leon, get back here, you suicidal idiot," Cassian hissed. I ignored him and yelled up at the beast. "Hey, big guy, you want to keep sitting in the dirt, or do you want a job with a dental plan?" The ogre stopped, looking genuinely confused. "Honey? For sitting?" "Exactly. It's called passive income, my friend," I laughed. "Cassian, put the sword away. You're scaring our new head of highway security." Cassian sheathed his sword with a look of pure bewilderment. You just unionized an ogre. I've studied the blade for 15 years, and you just bribed a calamity with honey and a job title." I just patted the ogre's massive stony toe. "Management, Cassian. It's the ultimate magic." I stood there, arms crossed, watching the rock ogre, whom I had decided to name Heavy Load Harry, happily snacking on a barrel of fermented honey as he began moving boulders to widen the pass. Cassian was still standing behind me, his hand white-knuckling the hilt of his sword, his face a mask of pure nightly existential dread. I didn't blame him. In his world, you either slay the monster or the monster slays you. In my world, you find out the monster's hourly rate and negotiate a 1099 contract. "Leon?" Cassian said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register he used when he was 5 seconds away from throwing me into a river. "You have officially lost your mind. You didn't just bribe a servant of the abyss, you gave it a job title. You realize that if this creature decides to eat a merchant instead of a barrel of honey, the king will have my head on a pike right next to yours." I didn't even look back at him. I was too busy staring at the blue glowing lines only I could see, pulsing across the mountain path like a neon roadmap. The omniscient supply chain skill was showing me a 200% increase in potential throughput now that the bottleneck was cleared. I felt a twitch in my eye, the kind of twitch a man gets when he sees a perfectly balanced spreadsheet. "Cassian, stop thinking with your muscles and start thinking with your margins," I told him, flashing that wide, toothy grin that usually made people look for the nearest exit. A dead ogre is a one-time victory. A working ogre is a long-term asset with low overhead. Besides, did you see the way he moved that 3-ton rock? That's better than any crane I could build with the local timber. Now stop pouting. Your armor is getting dusty and we have a kingdom to save, or at least a kingdom to make significantly more profitable. We headed back toward the Halcroft estate, but word of my achievements had apparently traveled faster than a high-speed fiber optic cable. When we reached the gates of the capital city, Oakhaven, we weren't met with a cheering crowd. We were met with a wall of royal guards and a very annoyed-looking man in a feathered hat holding a scroll. "Leon Halcroft," the man barked, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "You are summoned to the Palace of Sun and Shadow immediately. His Majesty King Alaric has questions regarding your unconventional methods of debt collection and your unauthorized treaty with a mountain beast." Cassian sighed so loudly it sounded like a tire deflating. "I told you, the pike, it's coming for us." "Relax, Cassian," I whispered as we were escorted through the winding, incredibly inefficient streets of the capital. "The king doesn't want to kill me. He's a CEO with a failing branch office. He's just frustrated. He needs a consultant. He just doesn't know it yet." The throne room was a disaster, not because it wasn't beautiful. It was covered in gold leaf and vaulted arches, but because the layout was a logistical nightmare. The petitioners were standing in a line that snaked out the back door, the guards were stationed in spots that left massive blind spots, and the king himself looked like he'd been awake since the previous century. To his right sat Princess Ilara, who looked significantly sharper and about 10 times more dangerous than her father. I didn't wait for the herald to finish my introduction. I walked right up to the center of the room, ignored the "kneel here" markings on the floor, and started squinting at the tapestries. "Leon Halcroft," the king thundered, slamming his fist on the arm of his throne. "You stand accused of extorting a baron, dredging a royal river without a permit, and hiring a rock ogre as a highway patrolman. What do you have to say for yourself?" I turned slowly, my face contorting into that specific, terrifying Leon face card, brows furrowed, eyes bulging slightly, and a smile that looked like it belonged on a shark. I saw the princess lean back, her hand drifting toward a hidden dagger. "Your Majesty," I said, my voice dripping with fake politeness. "I would apologize, but I was too busy fixing your bankrupt northern border. Do you know how much gold you were losing every day because that river was clogged with silt and that mountain pass was blocked? I calculated the loss. It's roughly 4,000 gold crowns a week. That's enough to buy a new palace every year, and you were just letting it rot in the mud." The room went silent. You could hear a pin drop, or more accurately, you could hear Cassian's soul leaving his body as he stood behind me. The king blinked, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. 4,000? That's impossible. Our treasurers said the losses were negligible. Your treasurers couldn't count their own fingers if they were wearing mittens, I snapped, pulling a folded piece of parchment from my tunic and waving it around. I've audited the flow. You have 3 different merchant guilds all taking a handling fee for goods that never move. You have a royal guard that spends 40% of its time standing in drafty hallways where nothing happens. And you have a princess who, if I'm not mistaken, is currently wondering if she should kill me or hire me to fix the palace's heating bill. Princess Ilara stood up, her eyes narrowing. "You're bold, Halcroft, or very stupid. My father asked about the ogre. You gave a monster a position of authority in this kingdom. Give me one reason why I shouldn't have Sir Cassian here execute you for treason right now." I looked at Cassian. He looked at me. He actually seemed to be considering it for a second. "Because," I said, leaning toward the princess until we were nearly nose to nose, "if you kill me, the ogre stops getting his honey. If he stops getting his honey, he gets hungry. And if he gets hungry, he's going to come looking for the nearest source of calories, which happens to be your father's royal stables. But if you keep me alive, I'll have the northern trade route running at triple capacity by the first snowfall. I'll turn your debt into a surplus, and I'll do it while making your enemies pay for the privilege. So, do you want a head on a pike, or do you want a kingdom that actually functions?" The king looked at the princess. The princess looked at me. Finally, she let out a short, sharp laugh. "He's a madman, father, but he's a madman who knows his numbers. Let him try, but give him a real challenge. If he's such a genius of logistics, let him handle the great winter grain shortage in the Ironhold province." The king's face turned grim. "The Ironhold? But Leon, that province is currently under siege by the Undead Legion. No supply caravan has reached them in months. They're starving." I felt a surge of adrenaline. This wasn't just a challenge, it was a high-stakes delivery mission with zero margin for error. It was like the Christmas rush, but with more zombies and fewer holiday bonuses. "The Ironhold?" I grinned, my face looking more demonic than ever. "Fine, I'll get the grain there, but I want full authority over the transport. I want Sir Cassian as my lead driver, and I want a 10% commission on every sack of grain delivered." 10%? The king gasped. "People are starving." "And I'm the only one who can feed them," I countered. "Efficiency isn't free, Your Majesty. Now, Cassian, stop looking at the princess's sword and let's go. We have a war to supply and a profit margin to protect." As we walked out of the throne room, Cassian finally spoke, his voice a whisper of pure exhaustion. You're going to use the undead to carry the grain, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes. You're wondering if zombies need to be paid a minimum wage." I patted him on the shoulder, my mind already racing through the logistics of necromancy-based labor. "Cassian, you're finally starting to think like a manager. Why kill a zombie when you can give it a backpack and a steady route? They don't sleep, they don't eat, and they never complain about the weather. It's the perfect workforce." "I hate you," Cassian muttered, but he adjusted his cape and followed me anyway. "I absolutely hate you." "I know, buddy, but wait until you see the quarterly results. You're going to love the bonus I've got planned for you." We reached the staging area where the grain was being loaded onto heavy wooden carts. It was a mess. Men were shouting, horses were panicking, and the mud was so thick it was swallowing the wheels whole. I stood on a pile of crates and took a deep breath. "Listen up, you losers," I screamed, silencing the entire courtyard. "My name is Leon Halcroft, and I am your new Director of Operations. From this moment on, if I see a man standing still, he's fired. If I see a cart overloaded, the driver is walking. We are going to the Ironhold. We are going through the undead territory, and we are going to do it in under 72 hours. Now, who wants to live, and who wants to be a case study in failure?" The workers stared at me in horror, but they started moving. They moved because they were more afraid of my face than they were of the zombies. And as the first cart began to roll, I looked up at the sky and smiled. The world of logistics had finally come to this fantasy realm, and God help anyone who stood in my way of delivery schedule. The road to the Ironhold was a jagged scar through the gray mountains, a place where the wind howled like a dying banshee and the shadows seemed to move on their own. We had 12 carts, 50 shivering soldiers, and one very grumpy silver knight. Cassian rode at the front of the line, his glowing sword acting like a magical headlight. "Leon," Cassian called out, his voice barely audible over the wind. "The scouts report a massive horde of the undead blocking the narrow bridge. There's no way around. We have to turn back or fight a battle we can't win." I hopped down from the lead cart, my boots sinking into the frozen slush. I looked at the flow map in my mind. The bridge was a massive bottleneck. If we fought, we'd lose half the grain in the crossfire. If we turned back, the Ironhold would fall, and I'd lose my 10% commission. Neither option was acceptable. "Stay here, Cassian," I told him. "I'm going to go talk to the regional manager." "The what?" stammered Cassian. "Leon, it's a necromancer. He's a servant of the Lich King. You can't talk to him." "Everyone has a boss, Cassian," I said, adjusting my coat and heading towards the bridge. "And every boss has a KPI they are failing to meet." As I approached the bridge, the air grew cold enough to crack bone. A figure draped in tattered black robes floated above the stone railing, surrounded by hundreds of skeletons with glowing green eyes. The necromancer looked down at me, his face a withered skull. "Mortal," the necromancer hissed, "you bring meat to the land of the dead? Your bones will join my bridge by morning." I didn't flinch. I pulled out a small handheld abacus I'd made and started clicking the beads aggressively. Yeah, meat and bones, I've heard the pitch. Listen, Mr. Shadow and Doom, I've been looking at your operation here, and frankly, it's embarrassing. You've got 600 skeletons standing on a bridge doing absolutely nothing. Do you know what your idle labor costs are? The necromancer blinked. Or at least the green fires in his eyes flickered. "Idle labor?" "Exactly," I shouted, pointing at a skeleton that was missing an arm. "Look at that guy. He's just rattling his ribs. He could be hauling sacks. And you're spending all your mana just keeping these guys standing here to scare away people who don't even have any money. It's a terrible business model. Why destroy the living when you can tax them for eternity?" The necromancer descended slowly, his robes hissing against the snow. Tax the living? Think about it, I said, leaning in with my most villainous grin. If you let my grain through, the Ironhold survives. If they survive, they keep growing food. If they grow food, they stay alive and have babies. More babies mean future skeletons for you. It's a long-term growth strategy. But if you kill them now, your workforce hits a ceiling. You're looking at a stagnant market, buddy. Is that what the Lich King wants? Stagnation? The necromancer went silent for a long time. The skeletons stopped rattling. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "What do you propose?" the necromancer finally whispered. "A joint venture," I said, clicking the abacus one last time. "You provide the unliving logistics. Your skeletons carry the grain across the mountain passes where my horses can't go. In exchange, I provide you with a steady supply of high-quality, expired biological materials from the capital's hospitals and battlefields. No more hunting, no more messy sieges, just a clean, professional supply chain of corpses delivered right to your door." Behind me, I heard the sound of Cassian falling off his horse. "You would deliver the dead to me?" the necromancer asked, sounding genuinely intrigued. "Signed, sealed, and delivered," I promised. "I'll even throw in some premium embalming fluid so your elite guards don't smell so bad. Do we have a deal, or do I have to find another necromancer who's more interested in career advancement?" The necromancer raised a skeletal hand, and the horde of skeletons parted like the Red Sea. "Pass, merchant of souls, but if your delivery is late, I shall come for your heart personally." "Don't worry," I laughed, waving the carts forward. "I've never missed a deadline in 2 lifetimes." As the carts rolled across the bridge, flanked by silent, grain-carrying skeletons, Cassian walked beside me, looking like a man who had seen the end of the world and realized it was managed by a guy in a suit. "Leon," he said quietly, "you just made a trade agreement with the Prince of Rot. You are officially the most terrifying person I have ever met." "Thanks, Cassian." I checked my watch. "Now hurry up, we're still 12 minutes behind schedule, and I want to be at the Ironhold before the soup gets cold." The transition from the mountain pass negotiation to the actual trek toward the Ironhold was a logistical nightmare I wouldn't wish on my worst middle management rival. We had a line of carts, a squad of soldiers who were more afraid of the dark than they were of the enemy, and a literal army of skeletons acting as our porters. "Leon," Cassian said, riding his horse alongside the lead wagon, where I was currently trying to calculate the friction coefficient of the frozen road. "The men are losing their minds. They're walking 10 feet away from skeletons that are carrying their lunch. They haven't slept because every time a rib cage rattles, they think they're about to be eaten." I didn't look up from my ledger. "They aren't being eaten, Cassian. They're being supported. Do you know how much weight those skeletons are taking off the horses? If we didn't have the Bone Brigade, we'd have lost 3 wagons to the slush by now. Tell the men that if they don't like the company, they can carry the crates themselves. I'll even give them a skeleton salary, which is 0. "It's not about the money, you sociopath," Cassian hissed, his silver hair windswept and messy for the first time since I'd met him. "It's about the soul. These men are knights of Oakhaven. They are supposed to fight the dead, not collaborate with them for logistical throughput." I finally closed the book and looked at him. I let my face slide into that specific, terrifying expression, my eyes wide, my jaw set in a way that made my teeth look far too prominent, and a vein throbbing in my forehead. "Leon, look at the horizon. That gray smoke, That's the Ironhold. They've been eating boiled leather for 2 weeks. If we arrive with half the grain because we were too proud to use free labor, are you going to explain to the starving children that their breakfast was sacrificed for the sake of nightly optics? Cassian opened his mouth to argue, looked at my face, and then promptly closed it. He sighed, a sound that carried the weight of 1,000 years of chivalry dying a slow, painful death. I hate it when you're right, but I hate the way you look when you're right even more. You look like a gargoyle having a stroke. That's the face of efficiency, buddy. Get used to it, I chirped, turning my attention back to my map. Suddenly, my omniscient supply chain skill flared to life. The blue lines on the ground turned a violent, flashing red. A notification popped up in my vision, floating right over Cassian's head. Warning, inbound supply chain disruption. Type, premeditated sabotage. Halt! I screamed, standing up on the wagon. Everyone, stop, right now! The caravan ground to a screeching halt. The skeletons stopped instantly, their glowing green eyes synchronized in a way that made the regular soldier shiver. "What now, Leon?" Cassian asked, drawing his sword. "Is it more zombies, a dragon, a bridge tax?" "Worse," I said, pointing to a clump of trees about 50 yards ahead. "Unnecessary overhead." Out from the trees stepped a group of men dressed in gleaming white armor. They looked like they'd been stepped out of a recruitment poster. In the center was a man with golden hair and a smile so bright it probably had its own light source. He carried a shield embossed with a rising sun. "Fear not, citizens! I am Sir Valerius the Radiant, Paladin of the Sun. We heard rumors of a dark necromancer leading a horde toward the Ironhold. We have come to purify this road." "Oh, you've got to be kidding me," I muttered, jumping down from the wagon. "It's a hero. I hate heroes. They have no concept of a budget." "Leon, wait," Cassian said, dismounting. "That's the Sun Order. They're incredibly powerful, and they're technically on our side." "They are on the side of making things expensive, Cassian," I snapped, marching toward the paladin. Sir Valerius leveled his glowing spear at my lead skeleton, who was currently holding a crate of premium dried beef. "Back, foul creature! Your existence ends today!" "Hey, Goldilocks! Put the toothpick away. That foul creature is on the clock." The paladin blinked, looking at me with confusion. "Mortal, why do you stand among the damned? Are you a prisoner? Do not fear, we shall liberate you." "I'm not a prisoner, I'm the boss," I yelled, standing between the paladin and my skeleton porter. "I am Leon Halcroft, and this is a registered Halcroft logistics shipment. These skeletons are under contract. If you break one, you're paying for the replacement mana and the delay in delivery." Sir Valerius looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Contract with the dead? This is an abomination. The law of the Sun Order states—" "I don't care what your HR manual says," I interrupted, my face twisting into a mask of pure corporate fury. I stepped right into the paladin's personal space. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're blocking a high-priority trade route during a famine. Every minute you stand here posturing, 3 people in the Ironhold pass out from hunger. Are you going to feed them with your radiance? Because unless you can turn that shield into a giant loaf of bread, you're just a bottleneck. You're a liability. You're a cost center with no revenue." The paladin took a step back, genuinely startled by the sheer vitriol coming out of my mouth. I am a hero of the realm. I have slain 3 liches and a chimera." "And how much did that cost the taxpayers?" I challenged, my eyes bulging. "The collateral damage alone from your holy explosions probably destroyed 3 farms. You're not a hero. You're a natural disaster in a cape. Now, out of the way, we have a deadline." Cassian walked up behind me, whispering urgently, "Leon, you can't talk to a paladin of the sun like that. They can literally set you on fire with a thought." "Let them try," I hissed. "I'll sue the Sun Order for lost profits. I'll tie them up in the royal courts for so long their grandkids will be paying my legal fees." Valerius looked at his men, then back at me. He seemed completely paralyzed. He was prepared for a fight with a demon, not a lecture on fiscal responsibility from a man who looked like he'd crawled out of a gutter. If these creatures truly are serving the living," Valerius stammered, his spear's glow fading, "then I suppose we cannot interfere, but we shall follow you to ensure no trickery is afoot." "Fine," I grunted, turning back to my wagons, "but you're not getting paid, and if you want to help, pick up a crate. Those capes look like they can handle at least 50 pounds of grain." The sight was absurd. A line of skeletons, followed by a squad of terrified soldiers, followed by a group of confused paladins carrying sacks of flour, all led by a man in a dirty tunic and a knight who looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. As we neared the iron hold, the air grew thick with the smell of decay and cold iron. The fortress was a massive structure built into the side of a mountain, surrounded by a sea of shambling, mindless undead. This wasn't the managed workforce I'd negotiated at the bridge. This was a wild, starving horde. "There it is," Cassian said, his voice grim. "The siege. We'll have to fight our way through. Leon, get in the back of the wagon. This is going to be a bloodbath." I squinted at the fortress. My omniscient supply chain skill was going crazy. I saw the flow of the undead. It wasn't a random swarm. They were circling the gates in a specific pattern. "Wait," I said, grabbing my telescope. "Look at the way they're moving. They aren't trying to break in. They're just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Valerius asked, his hand on his sword. "They're waiting for the internal supply to run out," I realized. The Undead Legion isn't just a military force, it's a blockade. They're using the fortress's own consumption rate against it. It's a classic starvation tactic, but implemented with the patience of the dead. I looked at the gate. I saw the Duke of the Ironhold standing on the ramparts, looking gaunt and desperate. "Cassian," I said, a new plan forming in my head, "how much do you trust me?" "On a scale of 1 to 10, -4, Cassian said instantly. "Why?" "Because we're not going to fight that horde," I said, a wide, wicked smile spreading across my face. "We're going to open a pop-up shop." "A what?" Valerius and Cassian asked in unison. "Think about it," I gestured to the thousands of undead. "These guys aren't attacking because they're waiting for the humans to come out. So we're going to give the humans a reason to come out. We're going to set up a drive-through window right on the edge of the siege line. We use the paladins to create a safe zone of holy light, a small corridor where the undead can't enter. Then we signal the fortress, we sell the grain through the corridor." "The undead will just swarm the corridor," Valerius argued. "Not if we distract them with a better offer," I countered. "What do the undead want? Energy, life force. Valerius, your radiance is like a giant battery. If you stand over there and pump out a lesser glow, not enough to kill them, just enough to get their attention, they'll cluster around you like moths to a flame. While they're distracted by your free sample of holy energy, we run the grain through the gap." "You want me to be bait?" Valerius asked, outraged. "A paladin of the sun is not a free sample. You're a marketing incentive, Valerius. Get the terminology right. Now, do you want to save the city or not?" 10 minutes later, the plan was in motion. Valerius was standing on a nearby hill, glowing like a neon sign, drawing the mindless attention of the horde. The undead drifted toward him in a slow, confused mass. Meanwhile, Cassian and I led the wagons through the cleared path toward the fortress gates. "Open the gates!" I roared, my voice echoing off the stone walls. "Halcroft Logistics is here! Delivery for Duke Ironhold! Please have your signature ready!" The massive iron doors creaked open just enough for us to slide the wagons through. As soon as the last cart was inside, the gates slammed shut, and the sound of the undead scratching at the stone filled the air. Inside, the fortress was a ghost town. People were slumped against walls, their eyes hollow. The Duke, a massive man with a beard like a bramble bush, stepped down from the stairs. "Who are you? How did you get past the Legion?" "Leon Halcroft," I said, hopping down and handing him a clipboard I'd fashioned from a crate lid. "And I've got 12 tons of grain, 3 barrels of salted pork, and a very expensive invoice for you. Sign here, here, and initial here. We don't accept thank yous as currency, by the way." The Duke stared at the clipboard, then at me, then at the wagons. He began to weep. You actually did it. You brought food." "Of course I did," I said, my Leon face card returning as I looked around at the inefficient way they were organizing their distribution. "But don't get too comfortable, Duke. Your storage system is a disaster. You're losing 4% of your stock to dampness. Cassian, get the men. We're not resting. We're reorganizing this entire pantry. If I see a single grain of wheat out of place, someone's getting a performance pip." "Cassian," whispered Cassian, leaning in, "maybe let them eat first?" "Fine," I grumbled. 30 minutes for lunch. Then we implement the new inventory management system. And someone tell that paladin on the hill to stop glowing. He's wasting mana that I'm going to bill him for later." As the people of the Ironhold began to eat, I sat on a crate of grain, watching the blue lines of the flow begin to stabilize. The fortress was safe, the profit was secured, and I had successfully used a paladin as a decorative lamp. I looked at Cassian, who was actually sharing his water with a starving child. "Hey, Cassian," I called out. "What, Leon?" he asked without looking back. "Tell the Duke he owes me a 15% hazardous delivery surcharge. I just realized I undercharged him." Cassian didn't even argue. He just put his head in his hands. "I'll tell him, just please stop smiling. You're scaring the children." I just laughed, the sound echoing through the cold stone halls of the Ironhold. The world of fantasy wasn't ready for a man who knew the true power of a surcharge. I stood on the highest rampart of the Ironhold, looking out over the frozen valley. The skeletons were still there, standing in silent ranks just outside the reach of the fortress's archers. The Duke, a man who looked like he'd aged 50 years in the last 5 days, stood beside me, clutching a piece of bread like it was a holy relic. "They're still there, Halcroft," Duke Ironhold rasped, gesturing toward the gray horizon. "The Legion doesn't sleep. They don't tire. They'll just wait until we eat through this grain, and then they'll squeeze us again. This isn't a victory. It's a stay of execution." I turned to him, and for a split second I let Leon Facecard take over. My eyes widened, my brow twitched with a manic energy, and my smile was wide enough to show far too many teeth. The Duke actually stumbled back, dropping his bread. "Duke, you're thinking like a victim," I said, my voice dripping with the kind of corporate confidence that usually preceded a massive layoff. "I see a siege, I see a captive market. I see a fortress that's under attack. I see a strategically located mountain facility with naturally occurring sub-zero temperatures. Do you have any idea what the storage costs are for perishable magical reagents in the capital? They're astronomical. But here, in the Ironhold, you have free natural refrigeration." Cassian, who had been leaning against a nearby battlement, let out a weary groan. "Here we go," He's stopped seeing humans and started seeing floor space. Ignore the knight, Duke. I continued, stepping closer until I was practically in his personal space. We're going to rebrand this place. The Ironhold Fortress is a name that invites conflict. It's aggressive, it's a target. But the Ironhold Northern Distribution Hub, that's an essential piece of infrastructure. We aren't going to hide behind these walls anymore. We're going to turn this mountain into the central clearinghouse for every trade route between the Oakhaven Kingdom and the Frost Giant Wastes. But the undead, stammered the Duke, they'll kill anyone who tries to come here. Not if we negotiate a transit ease of use agreement, I replied, checking my ledger. I've already spoken to the local branch manager at the bridge. The undead don't want your land, Duke. They want energy. We're going to set up a toll system. Every merchant who passes through the Ironhold hub pays a fee. A portion of that fee goes towards life force credits that we provide to the necromancers to keep their minions docile. It's a win-win. We get the trade, they get the energy, and you get a 5% cut of every transaction. The Duke looked at me like I had two heads, both of which were insane. You want to turn my ancestral home into a warehouse for merchants and a buffet for the dead? I want to turn your bankrupt pile of rocks into a profit-generating machine, I corrected him. Now sign these rebranding papers before I change my mind and let the skeletons have the basement. While the Duke was busy having a mental breakdown over my contract, my omniscient supply chain skill suddenly spiked. The blue lines on my mental map didn't just turn red, they turned a deep obsidian black. The temperature on the ramparts dropped 20 degrees in a single second. System notification. Regional CEO detected. The Lich King, Malakar the Voidborn, is requesting a dispute resolution. Cassian, I said, my voice losing its playful edge. Get the Paladin, and tell him to bring as much radiance as he can carry. We've got a VIP guest coming, and I don't think he's here for the grand opening. A pillar of frost fire erupted in the center of the courtyard below. From the flames stepped a figure that made the air itself feel like it was screaming. He was 10 feet tall, draped in armor made of frozen souls, with a crown of jagged obsidian floating above a skull that burned with blue fire. This was Malakar, the Lich King, the man who had been counting on the Ironhold's fall to meet his quarterly soul acquisition targets. The soldiers on the walls collapsed, their hearts literally stopping from the sheer pressure of his presence. Even Cassian went down on one knee, his silver sword vibrating in its scabbard. I felt the pressure too. It felt like a giant hand was squeezing my lungs. But then I remembered my old boss at the e-commerce firm. That guy used to scream at me for 30 minutes because a truck was 5 minutes late in a blizzard. Compared to a middle manager with a deadline, a Lich King was practically a puppy. I straightened my tunic, wiped the mud off my boots, and marched down the stairs toward the courtyard. "Leon, stop!" Cassian choked out, trying to stand. "That's a god of death!" "He's a competitor, Cassian, and he's trespassing on my loading dock." I reached the bottom of the stairs and stood 10 feet away from the towering avatar of death. I didn't kneel, I didn't pray, I pulled out my charcoal and a fresh sheet of parchment. "Malakar, I presume. You're late. I expected your legal representative 3 hours ago. I've already drafted a cease and desist regarding your unauthorized blockade of my primary shipping lane." The Lich King's head tilted slowly. His voice wasn't a sound, it was a vibration that rattled my marrow. "Mortal, you have disrupted the harvest. You have stolen the hunger of the void. Give me the souls of this city, or I shall grind your world into dust." I let out a loud, mocking laugh. I let the Leon face settle onto my face, eyes wide, a vein pulsing in my temple, and a smile that looked like a jagged wound. "Dust? You want to talk about grinding things down? Let's talk about your overhead, Malakar. Do you have any idea how inefficient your harvest is? You've had these people trapped for months. Your skeletons are crumbling from wear and tear. Your necromancers are burning through mana like it's water. You're hemorrhaging resources for an ROI that is, quite frankly, pathetic. The blue fire in the Lich King's eyes flickered. He seemed genuinely stunned. No one had ever criticized his business model before. I am eternal. I do not concern myself with resources. And that's why your empire is stagnant, I shouted, taking a step toward him. I started waving my charcoal at him like a weapon. You are a monopoly that's grown fat and lazy. You think you can just take whatever you want? That's not how a healthy economy works. If you kill everyone now, who produces the negative energy you need for your next project? You're eating your seed corn, Malakar. You're a CEO who's selling the office furniture for the Christmas party. You dare? The Lich King began, his hand rising to unleash a wave of death. I dare to offer you a better deal, I interrupted, slamming my ledger onto a nearby barrel. Stop the siege. Retract the Legion to the mountain peaks. In exchange, I will establish the Halcroft Void Soul Lease Program. You get a guaranteed steady stream of natural expiration souls from every hospital and hospice in the Oakhaven Kingdom. I'll handle the transport. I'll handle the paperwork. You get a consistent, predictable growth in your soul bank without lifting a skeletal finger. No more wars, no more sieges, just pure passive income. The Lich King paused. The frost fire around him dimmed slightly. I could practically see the gears turning in his ancient frozen mind. He was a creature of absolute logic, and for the first time in 10,000 years, he was being presented with a spreadsheet. Leon, Cassian whispered from the stairs, having finally managed to stand. You are literally trying to outsource death. Shut up, Cassian. I'm closing a deal, I hissed. I turned back to the Lich King. Well, Malakar, do you want to keep wasting your time in the cold, or do you want to be the first Lich in history to achieve an automated supply chain? The Lich King stepped forward, his massive cold presence looming over me. He looked down at the ledger, then at my terrifyingly eager face. He realized then what everyone else already knew. The man standing in front of him was far more monstrous than any undead. Produce the contract, mortal, the Lich King hissed. But if the quarterly quota is not met, I shall harvest your soul first. Deal, I said, offering a hand that was covered in charcoal and grime. But I'm going to need you to sign a non-compete clause for the northern trade route. My lawyers are very strict about that. As the Lich King vanished back into the frostfire, the blockade outside the walls began to march away. The flow lines in my mind turned a beautiful, steady green. I turned to the Duke, who was currently fainted on the ramparts, and then to Cassian, who looked like he wanted to join him. See, Cassian, I said, dusting off my tunic, logistics. It's the only thing that truly rules the world. Cassian just stared at the spot where the Lich King had been. I think I'd rather fight the dragon. At least the dragon doesn't ask for a quarterly report. Don't worry, I laughed, putting my arm around his armored shoulder. The dragon is next week. I've already calculated the transport costs for his horde. The dust hadn't even settled on the Ironhold's new distribution hub sign before the next problem arrived. It came in a carriage made of solid mahogany, escorted by 12 knights whose armor was so shiny it was practically a safety hazard. Leon, Cassian said, standing in the courtyard of the now bustling fortress. The royal carriage is here, and it's not the king, it's the High Chancellor of the Exchequer, Lord Sterling. He's the man who counts the king's gold, and he's known as the Iron Abacus. I didn't even look up from the crate I was using as a desk. I was currently overseeing a line of skeletons and humans working side by side to sort blue iron ore. Sterling? Sounds like a guy who's never had to deal with a supply chain disruption in his life. Tell him to wait. I'm in the middle of a batch processing optimization. Leon, Cassian lowered his voice, looking genuinely concerned. He has the power to freeze all your assets. He thinks you're building a private army of the dead to overthrow the crown. Private army? Do you know how much the insurance on a skeleton army would be? I snorted, finally standing up. I'm building a logistics network. If he wants to freeze my assets, he'll be freezing the only thing keeping the kingdom's economy from flatlining. Fine, let's go see the Iron Abacus. Lord Sterling was a man who looked like he had been preserved in vinegar. He was thin, sharp-featured, and wore a pair of spectacles that magnified his eyes to a terrifying degree. He stood in the center of the Duke's Hall, holding a stack of my recent invoices like they were pieces of heresy. "Leon Halcroft," Sterling began, his voice like dry parchment. "I have reviewed your activities. You have signed a trade agreement with a lich. You have repurposed royal fortresses into hubs. And you have been charging a 15% hazardous delivery surcharge to the crown's own vassals. This is not just irregular, this is fiscal treason." I didn't say a word. I just walked toward him, my boots clicking on the stone floor. I waited until I was just a foot away, then I pulled my Leon face card. My eyes bugged out, my jaw unhinged into a smile that looked like it belonged on a haunted ventriloquist doll, and my eyebrows twitched with the rhythm of a ticking clock. The air in the room seemed to grow heavy with the sheer weight of my professional intensity. Sterling actually recoiled, his spectacles slipping down his nose. "Fiscal treason?" I hissed, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. "Lord Sterling, let's talk about treason. Do you know what the cost of inaction is? While you were sitting in your climate-controlled office in the capital, the northern trade route was a zero-revenue zone. You were paying for guards to protect a road that moved nothing. I didn't just sign an agreement with a lich, I converted a liability into a strategic partner. I didn't repurpose a fortress, I optimized underutilized real estate." I slammed a hand on the table, right next to his stack of papers. "You call yourself the Iron Abacus? Then do the math," I shouted. "Oakhaven's GDP has increased by 12% since I took over this route. The mortality rate among our merchants has dropped because they're being escorted by skeletons I don't have to pay or feed. I am the best thing to happen to your balance sheet in a century, and you're here to talk to me about surcharges?" Sterling stammered, his hands shaking as he tried to reorganize his notes. "But the ethics! You are collaborating with the enemy." "The enemy is a deficit, Sterling," I roared, leaning in until our noses were almost touching. I let the Leon face card intensify. My eyes were practically vibrating now. "In my world, there is no good or evil. There is only in the black and in the red. Currently, Oakhaven is deep in the black, thanks to me. If you try to audit me, I will audit the king's personal expenditures. I've seen the wine receipts, Sterling. I know how much he spends on ceremonial silk ribbons. Do you want me to leak the ROI of those ribbons to the public?" Sterling turned a shade of white that matched the paladin's armor. He realized he wasn't dealing with a noble or a knight. He was dealing with a creature of pure, unadulterated capitalism. I suppose," Sterling squeaked, "that a temporary administrative exemption could be granted for your unique circumstances." "Good choice," I said, my face instantly returning to a calm customer service mask. "Now, since you're here, I've noticed the Royal Treasury uses a single-entry bookkeeping system. It's pathetic. I'm going to need you to sit down. We're going to spend the next 6 hours going over the benefits of double-entry accounting and real-time inventory tracking." Cassian, who had been standing by the door, covered his eyes with his hand. Oh God, he's going to torture the High Chancellor with spreadsheets. This is worse than the Lich King. For the next 6 hours, I broke Lord Sterling. By the time he left the Ironhold, he wasn't just approving my methods, he was crying because he realized his entire life's work had been an exercise in mathematical inefficiency. He left with a stack of Halcroft efficiency manuals and a promise to send me a shipment of high-grade ink. But as the carriage pulled away, my omniscient supply chain skill flared again. A massive red pulse came from the south, from the capital itself. Urgent notification. Total logistics collapse detected. Location: the capital wharves. Cause: the Kraken. I looked at the map in my head. A Kraken had moved into the main harbor of the capital. No ships could leave, no food could enter. The city was 24 hours away from a full-scale riot. "Cassian," I yelled, "forget the spreadsheets, we're going to the capital." "A Kraken, you Leon?" Cassian asked, drawing his sword. "You can't negotiate with a giant squid. It doesn't have a CEO. It doesn't care about margins." "Everything cares about margins, Cassian," I yelled, already jumping onto a horse. "A Kraken is just a biological blockade. It's an unauthorized toll collector. We're going to show that calamari what happens when you interfere with a Halcroft logistics schedule." As we thundered toward the capital, I wasn't thinking about a sword fight. I was thinking about the market price of squid meat and the potential for a new underwater shipping lane. The king was desperate, the city was starving, and I was about to play my biggest Leon face card yet. The months following the Kraken's recruitment were what the historians would later call the Age of the Blue Line. But for me, it was just a very, very long Tuesday. I stood on the balcony of my newly renovated Halcroft Logistics headquarters, formerly known as the disgraced Manor of Debt, and watched the sunrise. The town below didn't look like the muddy, depressing slum I'd woken up in. The streets were paved with high-friction stone, the drainage was perfect, and for the first time in Oakhaven history, the shops were opening on time. "You're doing that creepy staring thing again," a voice said from behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know it was Cassian. He sounded different lately. There was less "I'm going to kill you in the sleep" in his voice, and more "I've accepted that my life is now a series of delivery deadlines." "I'm not staring, Cassian. I'm monitoring the throughput." I flashed a mild version of the Leon face card, just a slight manic glint in the eye. "Look at the bakeries. They used to wait until noon for the flour carts to arrive. Now, because I've optimized the overnight skeletal delivery routes, they have fresh bread at 5 a.m. Do you know what that does to the local GDP?" Cassian leaned against the railing, looking down at the town. He wasn't wearing his standard babysitter armor anymore. He was wearing a custom-fitted suit of silver plate with the Halcroft Logistics gear and ledger crest etched into the breastplate. He looked like a legendary hero who had accidentally become a high-level executive. "The people don't care about GDP, Leon," Cassian said quietly. "They care that they aren't hungry. Yesterday I saw a group of kids playing Grand Logistics Lord in the square. One of them was making a face so terrifying I thought he'd had a stroke. I realized he was trying to imitate your expression." I laughed. "The Leon face card is becoming a cultural heritage? I should start charging royalties for that." "They don't hate you anymore," Cassian continued, ignoring my joke. "They're afraid of you, sure. They think you can see their thoughts because you always know when a merchant is trying to hide stock, but they trust you. Even the knights, they've stopped calling you the gambling scoundrel. Now they call you the Iron Manager." I felt a strange tug in my chest. It wasn't the caffeine. It was actually satisfaction. In my old life, I was a cog. If I disappeared, the company would have replaced my desk by Monday. Here, I had built something that actually mattered. "Don't get sentimental on me, Cassian," I grunted, though I was secretly checking my omniscient supply chain stats. My public trust bar was finally in the green. Sentimentalism is a non-productive asset. Now tell me about the Academy. "The Halcroft Academy of Resource Management?" Cassian asked with a smirk. "The first class of scribes graduated today. They can all calculate a 15% surcharge in under 3 seconds. The kingdom has never seen so many people obsessed with decimal points." This was the glory of my new life. I wasn't just moving boxes. I was rewriting the DNA of the world. I had introduced the concept of the weekend, which the nobles thought was a strike, but I proved increased Monday productivity. I had created a magical GPS system by linking my system's map to enchanted mirrors in every major hub. But the biggest change wasn't the buildings or the gold, it was the human capital. One afternoon, I was walking through the market when an old woman, a fruit seller who had once thrown a rotten tomato at the old Leon, stopped me. She didn't bow. No one bowed to me anymore because I'd told them it was a waste of 3 seconds. But she handed me a polished apple. "Lord Leon," she said, her voice trembling, "my grandson, he's working the docks for you. He says you gave him a pension plan? I don't know what that is, but he says it means I'll have a roof over my head even if he gets sick." I looked at the apple. Then I looked at her. I didn't pull the Leon face card. For the first time in this world, I just smiled. A normal, human smile. "It means your grandson is a valuable resource, ma'am, and you don't throw away valuable resources. Keep the apple. I've already calculated the tax-deductible donation for this quarter." She laughed and forced the apple into my hand anyway. As I walked away, I saw Princess Ilara standing by a fountain watching the interaction. She had become my unofficial director of public relations, mostly because she was the only one who could tell me no without me trying to audit her entire bloodline. "You're getting soft, Leon," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Giving up a free apple? That's a 100% loss on that transaction." "It's an investment in brand loyalty, Ilara," I countered. "A loyal populace is less likely to revolt when I eventually have to increase the toll on the Capitol Bridge to pay for the new sewer system." "Is that why you're building that giant statue in the center of the city?" she asked, pointing toward the construction site. I looked at the massive stone structure being carved by a team of earth mages and my best ogre laborers. It wasn't a statue of me. It was a giant stone abacus held aloft by a human hand and a skeletal hand joined together. "It's a reminder," I said, "that this kingdom doesn't run on magic or swords. It runs on the flow. And as long as the flow is healthy, everyone eats." This golden age lasted for a year. The Oakhaven Kingdom became the wealthiest nation on the continent. But success breeds a specific kind of rot. Jealousy. The Duke of the South, a man named Malvain, who had made his fortune through traditional, high-tax, slow-moving trade, couldn't stand it. To him, I wasn't a savior, I was a disruptor who had made his family's ancient wagon guilds obsolete. He didn't attack me with an army, he attacked me with legislation. He whispered in the king's ear. He told the king that I was shadow-ruling the country. He pointed out that more people cheered for the Halcroft crest than for the royal crown. He played on the king's fear of being irrelevant. And so, the Royal Logistics Act wasn't just a law, it was a declaration of war against my life's work. "They've come for the keys, Leon," Cassian said, entering my office on the morning the decree was issued. He looked tired, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "The Royal Guard is at the gates of every hub. They're demanding the ledgers. They're demanding the master key to the Kraken's harness." I sat in my chair, the sunlight hitting the polished wood of my desk. I didn't look angry. I looked disappointed, like a CEO watching a board of directors make a decision that would tank the stock price. "Do they know how to feed the Kraken, Cassian?" I asked softly. "No." "Do they know the specific frequency of the magic bells used to signal the skeletons to stop at the crossroads?" "Of course not." "Do they have the negotiated peace contracts I signed with the Lich King, which are written in a dead language that only I and my top auditors can read?" "They don't even know those contracts exist." I stood up, and for the first time in a long time, the Leon face card appeared. But it was different. It wasn't the manic look of a deal maker. It was the absolute look of a man who owned the world. "Then let them take it," I said. "Cassian, give the order. Every Halcroft employee is to leave their post. We are going on a sabbatical, effective immediately." "A sabbatical?" Cassian blinked. "You're just giving up?" "No," I grinned, and it was the most terrifying thing Cassian had ever seen. "I'm letting them see what the old ways actually look like. I'm giving them a 24-hour trial period of a world without Leon Halcroft." That is a very fair point. Since your format is a podcast-style narration, you can't rely on visual montages. Instead, you need theater of the mind. To make this work for listeners, we translate those hours into a sequence of emergency reports or chaotic atmosphere descriptions narrated by Leon's smug play-by-play. I sat in my favorite armchair back at the Halcroft Manor, swirling a glass of expensive fruit juice. Cassian stood by the window, his eyes wide as he watched the smoke rising from the capital's harbor in the distance. "Leon," Cassian whispered, "the harbor. I think a ship just hit the lighthouse." "That would be hour 1, I said, checking my pocket watch. You see, the Royal Guard thought they could just command the Kraken. They walked onto the pier with spears and shouting. But the Kraken doesn't respond to authority. It responds to the lard and laughter ritual my team developed. Without its morning snack and the specific belly rub it likes from the head porter, it gets cranky. I imagine it just swatted a royal galley into the seawall. The harbor is now effectively a giant driftwood pile. No ships in, no ships out." Cassian turned to me, horrified. "You're actually enjoying this." "I'm observing the consequences of poor management, Cassian. Listen, can you hear that faint sound? That's the sound of hour 4 hitting the northern pass." I stood up and walked to my wall-sized map. Right now, my Bone Brigade has reached the end of their last authorized route. Since the Royal Auditor refused to sign the daily ledger, the skeletons have no new commands. They don't rebel, they just sit. Imagine it, Cassian, a wall of 500 unmoving skeletons sitting cross-legged in the middle of the only mountain road. A caravan of medical supplies is currently staring at a pile of bone that won't budge for all the holy water in the world. "The king will execute us," Cassian groaned, pacing the room. "The king won't have the transportation to get the executioner here," I countered. By hour 12, the Duke of the South tried to prove he was better than me. He sent his traditional heavy-timbered wagons to move grain across my new highways. But he forgot that I engineered those roads with specific Halcroft drainage slopes and high-velocity curves. His wagons have wheels designed for mud, not speed. They're currently snapped in half in the first drainage ditch, blocking the grain flow entirely. I walked over to the window and pointed at a sudden flash of blue light in the center of the capital. And there's the finale, hour 20. A low, vibrating hum shook the manor's windows. "The Lich King, Malachar, is a very busy man," I explained to a stunned Cassian. "He expects his soul lease payment to be processed by noon. When the royal auditor called the payment a death tax and refused to sign the voucher, he effectively defaulted on a contract with a god of death. That pillar of frost fire in the square, that's Malakar's way of— "The king won't have the transportation to get the executioner here," I countered. By hour 12, the Duke of the South tried to prove he was better than me. He sent his traditional heavy-timbered wagons to move grain across my new highways. But he forgot that I engineered those roads with specific Halcroft drainage slopes and high-velocity curves. His wagons have wheels designed for mud, not speed. They're currently snapped in half in the first drainage ditch, blocking the grain flow entirely. I walked over to the window and pointed at a sudden flash of blue light in the center of the capital. And there's the finale, hour 20. A low, vibrating hum shook the manor's windows. "The Lich King, Malakar, is a very busy man," I explained to a stunned Cassian. "He expects his soul lease payment to be processed by noon." When the royal auditor called the payment a death tax and refused to sign the voucher, he effectively defaulted on a contract with a god of death. That pillar of frost fire in the square, that's Malakar's way of asking for a customer service representative. And since I'm on sabbatical, there's no one to answer the phone. I sat back down and picked up my book. In 24 hours, the king will realize that owning the keys to the kingdom is useless if you don't know which lock they fit. He doesn't need an army right now, Cassian. He needs an auditor. By the time I walked back into the palace, the king wasn't sitting on his throne. He was pacing the floor, clutching his hair, while his advisors screamed at each other in a pitch that could shatter glass. "Halcroft!" the king shrieked the moment he saw me. He looked like he had aged 20 years in a single afternoon. "The Kraken is eating the pier! The north is blocked! The Lich King is threatening to turn the palace into a mausoleum! Fix it!" I stood there, perfectly calm, holding a single piece of parchment in my hand. I didn't bow, I didn't rush, I just let the chaos swirl around me like a poorly managed inventory cycle. "I can't, Your Majesty," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "I'm on sabbatical. My union representative says I'm not allowed to look at a ledger until my contractual autonomy is guaranteed by a royal blood oath." The Duke of the South stepped forward, his face turning a shade of red that suggested his blood pressure was off the charts. "This is blackmail!" he roared. I turned to him slowly, and the Leon face card flared with the power of 1,000 suns. My eyes were wide, my grin was jagged, and my presence filled the room with the crushing weight of a 100% market share. "No, Duke," I hissed. "This is a service-level agreement. You wanted the network? You got it. How's the ROI looking today?" The Duke collapsed into his chair, defeated by the sheer math of his own failure. The king didn't even hesitate. He grabbed the parchment from my hand and signed it with a shaking hand before I could even offer him a pen. The story doesn't end with a battle. It ends with a celebration that the kingdom will remember for generations. The Logistics Act was burned in the city square, the smoke rising like a sacrifice to the gods of productivity. I was officially named the Grand Logistics Lord, a title that sat higher than any duke or count in the realm. But more than the title, it was the change in the people. When I walked through the city now, people didn't just see a scoundrel or a lucky gambler. They saw the man who kept the heart of the world beating. They saw the flow. And Cassian? He finally stopped calling me Leon with that tone of disgust. He stood beside me on the docks, his silver armor polished to a mirror finish, watching the Kraken, now wearing a custom-made Halcroft Employee of the Month ribbon on its lead tentacle, tow in a massive fleet of trade ships with effortless grace. "You really did it, Cassian," He handed me a drink. "You turned a fantasy kingdom into a giant functioning warehouse." "It's not a warehouse, Cassian," I said, looking at the glowing blue lines of the flow in my mind. They weren't just internal anymore. They stretched beyond the borders, reaching towards the neighboring empires like the veins of a titan. It's a legacy. "So," Cassian asked, looking at me with a smirk that was almost, but not quite, fond, "what's the next project? The Desert Kingdom? The Elven Forests?" I pulled out a fresh ledger from my coat and clicked my charcoal into place. The Leon face card appeared once last time, full of ambition and the promise of a very profitable future. "I hear the elves have a very inefficient way of harvesting mana crystals," I said, my eyes gleaming with the light of 1,000 upcoming audits. "It's time for a consultation." As the story draws to a close, the final image is the Halcroft Logistics logo, a gear, a ledger, and the silhouette of a man with a very, very wide grin.
Thank you for sharing this chapter with us at Velvet Chapters Brew. Comment, like, and subscribe to see where the next page takes us.